Get in, losers. We're going speculating.
Chapter 12. 8-House Skull. 6 months BTEM. You kill a planet, you can never be fast enough, you are not a normal victor.
Chapter 13. 3rd House Skull. Ianthe has a complicated power dynamic with her own arm.
Chapter 14. 9th House Skull. You take tea with God. You confess the 9th house sin. No one needs to know.
Chapter 15. 9th House Skull. You dream of the body. You are afraid of many things. The body keeps a secret. So let's start out with the things that we learn in this chapter are the other purpose of the calf's soul.
Right.
What BOE is / what it means.
Mm-hmm.
We learn that Cassie was incredibly powerful because Harrow was the only other necromancer other than Cassie who first time in the river did necromancy and could stay awake.
Yup.
BOE has been infiltrating the houses for a while.
Yeah.
The foreshadowing that I saw in this chapter that I think is hilarious is I love all of, like, this is where we start talking about soup. And then from here on out, every meal is soup.
Dear listener, Marie texted me this week and was like, can you make the first question about soup? And I was like, yes, I can.
Like, it's such a good in-joke. It's
so
good.
fucking funny.
There's these mentions of Wake essentially making BOE more bold. I think that that's really fascinating foreshadowing.
Yeah.
There's also other foreshadowing that's just ridiculous. So there's a mention about Harrow needing another haircut already.
I forget about this every time I read this book.
I fear that I have to give all of the quotes where Gideon pops up in these chapters. Where it's like, this is Gideon. Okay. So there's one where it's talking about in chapter 12, it's talking about Harrow riding the beast. And it says, this might have been cool if it wasn't faintly ridiculous.
There's actually another one in chapter 12 too, specifically where it's clearly Gideon saying, it's like you never wanted that sword to hold an edge ever again.
Oh, I forgot. I didn't do that one. The great sword you carried, not the rapier that hung on your hip, blobby. I never needed the dramatics. Right. You drove the point of the bone-sheathed blade into the talc. Obviously, you never wanted it to have an edge of any kind ever again.
With the hand on the pommel. The pommel, goddammit!
Okay, and then in chapter 13, it says, despite the fact that you had said not being cocked at all.
Sorry.
And then it goes on with it. And then it's Harrow thinking about Ianthe and how Ianthe is, it says that as a necromancer, she was a genius, though you thought she relied too much on shortcuts and circumventions. She was also obsessed with what might lie beneath the river and, though this was a touch hypocritical coming from you, but never mind, a fucking crank.
That is absolutely amazing. Harrow, you're insane.
In chapter 14, it says, you so rarely ate for pleasure that it was beyond imagining that you would become a normal human being who learned how to make a sandwich. Let's see. And then the last one in chapter 15 was when she wakes up and it says, when you stared at your bloodshot eyes in the mirror and tried to remember Ortis Niganad's, you couldn't recall a difference. They were both that deep and fathomless black, the color Ianthe called black roses, because Ianthe was overfamiliar and frankly a pervert.
Oh, I love it so much. It's delightful when Gideon leaks through. And it also is, so it's interesting. The more that I actually pay attention to the narration, the more I'm realizing that it's not just Gideon narrating, that there are aspects of it that really are very much Harrow, because you are getting some of this mixing thing going on, right? So even one of those that you mentioned there where Harrow thinks that Ianthe relies too much on shortcuts is the kind of thing that Harrow would think and Gideon wouldn't necessarily think.
Yeah.
You know?
Because it's like Harrow thinking, and I think that she's a crank or whatever, but it's like Gideon narrating what Harrow is thinking.
Yes.
So it's so funny.
There's a lot of layers here. That's good shit.
Yeah. So here we go into the theory crafting.
Okay. Blood of Eden came to their attention 5,000 years ago, but they were already looking for the Emperor. So there's a 5,000-year gap.
Source Graham came to them 6,000
years ago to tell them about it, 100%. But it does make you wonder how long these other planets have been populated. If there's been thousands of years of people building societies on these other planets, love it. I think this is really, really fascinating. And I love the timeline here that you're describing. Source Graham, they figure it out. For sure, Jaw does not want people to judge him for what happened. Like, as soon as Brooke said that today, because I really have, I read myself into characters too much. I was like, he's angry on Harrow's behalf, but for sure he is just angry because no one can blame me. No one should judge me.
Yeah, he's not a good guy.
Yeah. And I think he's such an interesting character because he's not a good guy, but I don't think he's like fundamentally evil. I just feel like he's fundamentally a dick who's super self-involved and he thinks he's doing things for the benefit of everyone. Or maybe he doesn't even really think that, but he wants people to believe that. He wants to believe it about himself. It's really complicated. And I think he does genuinely he does his version of love for other people, but only when it doesn't get in the way of his aspirations, right? Like, I think he does have some father figure love for Harrow, but the second Harrow crossed him, he would fucking burn her in a heartbeat.
Well, and it's also, you have to remember, at the same time that he's having these conversations with her, he has Gideon trained on her.
Trying to kill her.
Murder
to kill her over and over. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, yeah, it's like for her own good, right? Because he's trying to shock her into becoming a fully merged lictor. And like they have an argument about how Gideon's doing this.
So I think that's really like a weird situation. I think that it's also not the fucking best method, y'all. You try a couple times and she doesn't pop into lictorhood, then why are you still trying? That's just you being an asshole. I think it's a bad method from the beginning. But as I said, Harrow is objectively one of the greatest necromancers of all time. She gets compared to fucking Cassiopeia, okay? Like, she is a brilliant, brilliant necromancer. And the better way to use a resource like that would be to protect her fucking body and let her do her thing in the river. But instead, they're just being weird about what they think a lictor ought to be. I don't know. The whole thing is kind of like pisses me off, as it probably should. This actually kind of goes to one thing that John, I think, said that I think was interesting, which was how much necromancy is Jod keeping back for himself. This was kind of interesting to me because we know one of the big fucking reveals of this book is that he's at the very least kept back that there was a version of lictorhood that did not involve murdering your best friend. And we know that his magic is fundamentally different than other magic. And we know that he likes being the most powerful one. But it does make me wonder how many other things are going on as well. There are a couple other things that I wanted to mention. I want to talk about Wake just a little bit because I think Wake is really weird. They talk about this demagogue coming to power and how she's just incredibly charismatic. And it's possible that she was just an insanely charismatic demagogue. It feels like there's something special about her. And there certainly, at the end, ends up being something culty about her. All of these different, these fighter shuttles that have a portrait of Wake in them, which is very culty in itself.
I think
our
this
newbies
is more lictors doing weird shit.
You think that the lictors, like, interfaced with Wake and taught her things that she needed to know? Or you think, what?
I mean, I don't know. Like, this is just coming to mind, like, just right now. But I think that it's very clear that, like, there's conversations. I think this is me, like, reading ahead to, like, get ahead of things. And so maybe I'm mixing things up. And so maybe I should kind of wait. But it doesn't matter because we're in the spoiler section. But it's like Augustine basically yells at Mercy at some point and tells her, you are playing a dangerous game. You need to stop.
Yes. Yeah. And it's unclear what that is because you're like, well, I mean, we were all playing a dangerous game 19 years ago. But then you and I know that Mercy is still involved with BOE. She shows up on that planet that Camilla and Corona are on. Yeah.
So there's that. They have their suspicions about Cytherea being involved separately than them.
Yes. And it's unclear which direction that went. Did Cytherea reach out or did Blood of Eden get her on side? In which case, how? Yeah, there's something about Wake that comes off as special to me. And it's partially that I'm frightened of her. So maybe it's just about her as a person. But there's something about it that has ancestral pre-resurrection vibes. It's very, very personal to her. And she, like, her hatred of Jod is like, it's just very personal, right? It's not about a political entity that is oppressing you. And I don't know where this comes from. Maybe it's just about focusing anger, and that's just who she is as a person.
Chapter 16, Fifth House Skull. 6 months before the Emperor's murder. You take notes. Mercy and Augustine at each other's throats. The inside skinny on resurrection beasts. Chapter 17, Eighth House Skull. Mercy is not forthcoming. The saint of duty wants you dead.
Broken second house skull. Someone is carrying a lot of anger towards Judith. And a gun! Holy shit, they're too goddamn smart.
Oh my God. Sorry, they're incredible. I love that Brooke is still on the Calamities track. Like, amazing. Yes. I fucking love.
Well, she says, what does Cam have of pals? And I was like, pieces of pals.
We were like, she has pal. Physically. I also loved, so I had put in the notes this week, did we ever talk about why Harrow stabs Kith in the first place? And you had put a note here that says exactly what John said.
Right. Yeah, he's like, oh, the sword wanted to stab Kith to get into the body. Okay, yeah. John. And then you led them. You're like, so what the hell's going back at Canaan House? And he was like, oh, she excised Gideon. And so that's why there's an alternate history. It's like her brain memories. And I'm like, so close.
Well, I know, exactly. Well, so like, they have been murder reporting about whether she like excised these memories, which is dead on, but they still believe exactly what I believed, which was that the Canaan House stuff was her filling in the gaps, was made up memories. But it is such insane made up memories. Like to have added in, so like especially now when we start getting these murders, murder by gun is not close to something that Harrow has experienced before. It's not something that she would casually insert. She could have casually inserted people getting killed by bone monsters, but she didn't. And I think that's actually a pretty clear indication that this is something bigger and different from just her brain trying to create new memories. It's an interesting one. They did great, though. I'm so proud of them. I have a couple of questions that I want to talk about this week. This is a weird thing, but I mostly just want to bring it up. There are incredibly specific details in the Lictor Mausoleum where Kithraea's body is.
Right.
And they are different from the way any other part of the Mithraeum is described. There are enormous steel-edged columns with twisting wires and bones threaded through them under smoked glass. And there are glistening strands of fat around threads of copper, clearly like as insulation. We already know that copper was thought to be somehow impassable by spirits. We know that from the mysterious study of Dr. Sex, and we know that it's not impassable. So in my head, I feel like this is like some sort of weird warding to try and keep the lictors where they are.
When the Mithraeum is first brought up to us or first described, he says this is where we ran first.
Yeah.
And that it's a thanergetic part of space.
Oh, that's interesting.
I have to double check that. It's like very much like it is a like another base, somehow like surrounded by Thanergy planets. And I don't remember if he says that it's thanergetic or not.
That's interesting.
So that's probably something to kind of like look back at. But it's almost like, okay, is this like a beacon of some sort? Or is this like how they anchor themselves there and it's not a stele, but it's like how they find where it is?
At some point, Harrow does say that like any necromancer would be able to detect it from really far away because it just basically is flashing, hello, we're dead. Like you can feel how much Thanergy is in the void of space through the Mithraeum. Yeah, there's something really weird here. There's something truly weird about this mausoleum. All right, here's my question. Harrow asks Ianthe if she can hear movement, and Ianthe says no, crazy cakes. So, is she already gaslighting Harrow, or is she just not paying attention?
I think yes. I think it's the same thing of like later on when Kithraea climbs under her bed.
You think she is gaslighting Harrow? She like can see it or hear it. I mean, it is actually a really classic psychological control technique that cult leaders use to keep people uncertain about whether what they know is true. It makes them reliant on the other person for confirmation. It means you can control what they see and hear and believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we do our Gideon references?
Absolutely. I mean, the obvious one is pommel.
Yeah, pommel. So the very first one, it starts with, "You had always liked to write notes." I was like, that one feels like it could go either way, but I'm like, that's kind of Gideon.
Yeah, that feels like that's Gideon being like, yet more of this.
Yeah. And then they're describing the ninth house rapier. And it says, at the termination of each wire was a single canine tooth, and the end, pommel, was a soft, worn knob of black dyed bone.
It's still funny. I love it because, like, the energy is, it's not that fucking hard, Harrow. It's just one word.
The as we have already brought up in the episode, you did not examine Eat It Dripping, as maybe you should have. And then it's talking about, like, watching Ianthe spar and Augustine being mad at her, and it said, "From what little you could tell, her form was perfect. Her lines were exquisite. She never dropped the sword or fumbled with it." Which proved again how inadequate a standard what little you could tell was.
You're like, she's pretty good.
She's pretty good. She never drops a sword.
No,
like, what?
That is not sufficient.
Yeah. Okay, now we can move on. We can move on to the bubble.
Hold on, because this goes to Gideon. Although, so these are not Gideon coming through references, but these are Easter eggs, so they kind of remind me of it. In the bubble, there were some good Easter eggs and callbacks that I liked. So it would be like being set upon by a ghost out of time, because that's like exactly what it is, basically. And like something from an old story, which I like because effectively we think that the bubble is like a play. They are acting out a story. So there is some of that element to it. But the great Easter egg and callback is, of course, Harrow regretted not making him take a solemn pledge of silence. Only a real idiot of a cavalier would have accepted something like that.
I also like that as we're talking about, like, the pommel, there's a point in here where Harrow says, "This weapon can only fire 6 projectiles before being needed to replenished." "Reloaded," said Abigail, helpfully.
Yes.
So it's like priming you of, like, the little, hey.
Yeah, someone else fixing your terminology.
With correct terminology.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Like, this is another key that starts showing you, like, what is going on in the play, in the river bubble.
Yeah.
Is Dias being like, why am I here?
Yeah, she's so confused. She keeps saying, I just want to know. I just want to understand.
And that's, like, some of, like, the first stuff. It's really interesting to, like, watch the ghosts, because I think it has to do with Abigail figures it out immediately.
Yes.
And then she starts talking to the other spirits and trying to be like, yeah, what actually is going on here? But, like, reassuring them. But it's like Dias hadn't been pulled in yet.
Yeah. So this was something actually that I thought was interesting. Dias is pulled in not for this moment, but somehow for Judith's death. Like, Marta must have been pulled in earlier than this moment where we see her, because what she's reporting is that she did a series of steps, that she saw the sleeper, that she like was banging on the outside. But she certainly was pulled in quite recently because she does not understand what's going on. And it's another one of these beautiful, beautiful moments that Tamsin creates where you can easily dismiss this as like the unbearable shock of having had this horrific thing happen next to her, this unthinkable thing that no one could have prepared for because guns don't even exist, really. Her intense fear, and I just want to know how it happened, what's happening here, why am I here, I just want to understand, is something you can dismiss as being part of trauma, but in fact is literally because she has just been pulled out of the river and into a bubble where she is now acting in a play as a dead-ass spirit ghost. It's some fucking crazy psyche shit that Tamsin's doing, and I love it. I also, sorry, this is a brief thing and it's nothing, but I just think it's funny because John was like, we've never seen anyone in orange hazard suits except for Harrow on the planet. And I was like, ha ha ha, you don't remember that Gideon's mom was in an orange hazard suit when she fell down in, literally chapter 1 of Gideon the Ninth. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is a quick note about Ianthe and Corona taking over the world. Okay. Ianthe says that all the time that she was carrying off Corona's con, she learned that shame was a privilege. But she says Corona's con. And I think it's so interesting because this is something we talked about in As Yet Unsent, where Judith basically says Corona would never be able to like carry off a con that she had not come up with or would be willing to do a plan that she had not instigated.
Yeah, that great catch. That is a fantastic catch. I think that I maybe subconsciously caught it a little bit and was like, oh, there's something there. But what?
I definitely, this was like a third read of the chapter this week. And I was like, wait a second.
Corona's con.
The other thing I wanted to know was, so obviously Ianthe is obsessed with ghosts and liminal spaces and hell. Do we think that she deliberately decided to study liminal spaces as part of whatever the fuck their power play was?
Yeah.
Or was she just being a necromancer? Is this, because it seems increasingly, as I'm like buying into Ianthe and Corona taking over the world, I think that almost everything they've done is deliberate. It makes me wonder whether liminal spaces plays into this.
I think it's like they were trying to start figuring out lictorhood.
Earlier even than being at Canaan House. I buy that. I actually really buy that.
They wanted to know what lictorhood is. And then once, because I think it even goes into like later on, like there's kind of hints later in Harrow where it's like once she attains lictorhood, they want to figure out what God has.
Yeah, they really are trying to go the full fucking distance. It's going to be very interesting.
I have something that is theory-wise, which is Augustine says the power doesn't flow both ways.
So the question is then, the power doesn't flow both ways in a normal lictor. Is that the context?
Yeah. So does that go, because that's him explaining what happens when your soul leaves the body and your cavalier is left behind. You don't do necromancy. Your cavalier can't do anything with necromancy.
Right. The question that you have here is what happens if the power does flow both ways? Is that a perfect lictorhood? The last thing I wanted to float by you is actually Augustine and Mercy's conversation. So the battle tricks of decades past, the only thing we really know is that Augustine and Mercy conspired to create Gideon the Ninth, but obviously she's not doing that again. So what are these battle tricks of decades past? We know she's interfacing with Blood of Eden, but we don't know why. And he says this really fucking weird thing. He says, but does John know? And Mercy says, that's a foul implication. And I don't know what that means. It implies almost that John did know at some point, or potentially that's a foul implication. There's something fucking weird here. I just don't know I don't know yet what Mercy is currently planning with Blood of Eden.
I wonder if it's something about they're digging up history.
Interesting.
They know that they don't know.
Yeah.
Or they realize at some point that because what if he did something, there's all this stuff with the bubbles. What if he did something where that's how he implanted their memories?
Oh, interesting. I actually fucking love that they have very real memories of going through these circumstances, except they happened in a river bubble or something like that, where it did actually happen to them.
Yeah, where he creates some sort of a river bubble to play through everything that leads up to. But because it's similar to how Harrow's bubble breaks down, it doesn't.
That potentially stuff leaks in or stuff leaks out, or
they catch the inconsistency and then they can remember.
Yeah. Oh. This is going to be really, really interesting to play into. And there's this moment at the end of Harrow where John confirms that Augustine was a pre-resurrection man, and Augustine says, thank you for confirming that, which means he doesn't know. He doesn't remember. I think there's a lot of gaping holes in everybody's understanding. We've talked a lot about not inconsistent narrators. What are they called? Unreliable narrators.
Right. But why are you unreliable? A lot of the time it's just unreliable because their perspective is skewed. They don't have the information. And when you're looking through their perspective, there's no way. So it's not truly an unreliable narrator. I don't know if it has another name, but it's
right.
An unreliable perspective. An ignorant perspective.
Yeah, an ignorant narrator, an unreliable perspective. I like that a lot. And I think it is actually interesting, just more broadly in general, where, for instance, Brooke clocked the fact that Jod thinks of his lictors, his hands, as part of himself and as though he has control. And we know that they've been fucking, back channeling and all been treasonous.
And he might think that he has more power than he does.
Yes. I like the idea that literally everyone is operating under false assumptions here. There's not a single person who would be a correct narrator.
Maybe that's what the bad old tricks are, is finding a way to basically bypass any compulsion that Jod has over you and then saying, oh, but does John know? That's a foul implication that I have given up my compulsion.
Yeah, that's interesting. Woo! Chapter 19, Second House Skull. 10 months before the Emperor's murder. The Saint of Duty tries to murder you. Mercymorn is irked at his timing.
Chapter 20, Ninth House Skull. 6 months before the Emperor's murder. Yet more murder attempts. The origins of your house. Anastasia and Annabelle Lee.
Chapter 21, Broken Sixth House Skull. Execution of the Sixth. Endless Reign. Him I'll kill quick.
Chapter 22, Seventh House Skull. 6 months BTEM. Kitharia walks.
Well, hello, Marie.
Hello. My child is making me crazy. Just a sec.
Yeah, no worries.
I wish that my microphone would pick up all the way from over there of It's Mother's Day, go away. To my child. That's the whole point of Mother's Day, right? So everybody leaves you the fuck alone.
Oh, God, that's fucking incredible. This is like... It's so horrible because, like, obviously, you know, when it's like big good days, people want to celebrate you. And the thing that, like, the biggest gift anyone could give me is 48 hours where I am at an unknown hotel with no cell phone and no one knows where I am. This is like my dream. I fucking passionately dream about 48 hours of no contact.
That's called burnout. Anyway, what do we want to talk about first?
So I am grateful to them for kind of like talking a little bit more about this second timeline, which we know is in the bubble. And it's an interesting thing because, again, when I was reading through it the first time, I really had the same exact experience as Brooke.
Even times 5,000,001, I was like, why do we care about all of the details? Why is this going on so long? Is it just for ambiance? And then you're like, no, there's so many illusions. Like, I just skipped ahead trying to find things. And it's like, Harrow wakes up on her third day of consciousness without Gideon. But when Abigail is like, oh, I'm trying to calculate, like, how long it's been. It's 9 months.
Yep.
Like, there's so many illusions of, like, other things going on here where I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah.
It's completely fascinating. And I think it actually, like, one, the existence of the bubbles is actually an enormous plot point. That's like a huge, it's really important to Palamedes and his pathway. So, like, the bubbles themselves are really interesting. And I think we talked last time about how we don't even know, like, the full extent to which bubbling has been used or could be used in order to create new realities for people and new memories for people, not to mention keep people alive. So, I mean, I think it is important. But the other thing is, reading it again, it seems obvious now. So, like, for example, Harrow and Gideon almost never encounter Abigail throughout the entirety of Gideon the Ninth. She's basically an NPC. And here, she's a serious character. Similarly, this Dulcinea, so dramatically different from the Kitharia Dulcinea that we meet last time. And the thing is, that you cannot explain. You cannot explain that by Harrow making up memories to fill space, because she would have used what she already knew. This thing of making up totally a new kind of terror using the gun, and this thing of characters that are fully fleshed out characters that we did not meet, cannot be explained simply by Harrow trying to redo what she had at Canaan House.
This also tickles something in my brain, too, where I think that this is just like a huge meta thing of recognizing that one of the ways that Tamsin is a writer, and like where so much of her writing was before she starts being published, is fan fiction.
Yes.
And so it's like, this is a new fan fiction version of Gideon the Ninth, where you get to interact with characters that you never got to interact with. You have this alternate reality where you're like, what if Magnus and Abigail didn't die immediately and we actually got to hang out with them and we actually got to know Abigail? What if we actually got to know any of these other characters? And then she explicitly leans into it with all of her ridiculous AU, like, alternate universes within the alternate universe.
Once we actually get the barista and once we actually get the, like, Emperor's daughter marrying off party. That's so fucking funny. I think this is dead on. And it is kind of something that you always wish for. It's almost like fun to get to have the experience of Canaan House again. It would be almost fun to do it over and over in different ways. And this is, I'm really sure I've told you about this before.
The second time around, though. The first time around, you're mad.
Yeah. This is true. It's very frustrating. At some point deep into our Patreon life goals, I will force us to do a double feature of Happy Death Day and Happy Death Day 2, which are two movies that I absolutely adore. But in the second one, it really is clear they were like, this would just be fun to make again. So they put it basically in an alternate reality so that they can do it again, but with a different bad guy they have to figure out. And it works. It's just fucking fun. Ugh.
I love that. I also, because I'm always counting, can we start out with the references to...
Please. Oh, yeah, like
Gideon.
Gideon sneaking in the narration.
I also started counting. There's only one mention of the pommel before you start getting into the like last 3 chapters from last week and the 3 chapters from this week. And then it goes from 1 reference to like 5 references.
Interesting.
So there's
like maybe
so many
Gideon's
more references.
presence is actually ramping up inside of Harrow.
And so these are things that I've pulled out of being like, I think that this is Gideon. So the first sentence is when she's getting stabbed by the Saint of Duty, and she like pauses to look at him, and it says, "This is a fool's move. Why didn't you run? You chose to watch as though you could learn anything." And I think that's like Harrow blaming herself and being like, "You fucking idiot." And the next sentence is, a less critical party might have pointed out that you'd had a surprise gift of 12 inches of steel through the chest and made your pecs spring the blade back out with your own rib cage.
This is totally true. Also, yeah, I mean, Harrow would never say sproing, but I also love the like 2 different parties watching herself, like, and one of them,
it's like her watching
beautiful.
herself and being
love.
You fucking idiot. And Gideon being like, also,
calm
down. And then the next one is, it says he used the butt of his sword. It would be lying to say you now regularly called it the pommel. And then after you have this as one of our headers or whatever, what fitting epitaph for your fragile bones? And the next sentence is, perhaps here lies the world's most insufferable witch.
Yup, that is deep Gideon. No melange there. That's pure.
That's just Gideon. Let's see. There's another reference to the pommel in chapter 22. It says, your hands cupping the bottom of the hilt. Still the pommel. And then I think that's all I've got for like this is deep Gideon.
I love that. This is so fun. I also like the idea of it ramping up more. Like if you graphed it out by chapter, you would watch Gideon seeping through more and more until she actually comes all the way through.
I also find it interesting, just like in the bubble, the way that the bubble is talked about with some of these things. It's like Harrow's having a confusion of trying to be like, do I remember seeing the Tridentarii? Like, how would I even find them? And like, Abigail's like, can you find them? This is one where I'm like, fuck you, Tamsin, where Ortis says, the sleeper who sleepeth not. Perhaps a better name would have been the Waker.
The Waker.
Tamsin.
And you're like, wake on the nose. On the nose.
Right? And then you have Abigail. I think this is also why she was like, hey, like, because she doesn't know who died and who didn't. And I think she's trying to figure out, like, what is going on. And I think, like, this is a chapter where Abigail's like, oh, the weird bodies that are, like, mutilated and you can't tell what they are, and the things that act weird are the ones that aren't actual souls. And she says later on, like, she's looking at the body that was apparently Palamity Sextus examining. And she says, no defense wounds, Pent murmured, just like Judith. I wonder. So she's like starting to figure out like why they're there, or why certain people are there, and why some of them act like NPCs, because some of them are, because there's not an actual soul to come in. And I think that's partly why she asks Harrow to find the twins.
Yeah, and the way she asks it is interesting too. She's like, can you find Corona? Oh, and also Ianthe, obviously. So it makes me wonder if she knows something about what happened with Ianthe.
Right.
Although I don't know that that's true. It's just a weird way that she asks it.
Or maybe she's going off of, who knows? But she asks it in a weird way.
Yeah, this is a tough one. What the fuck is up with Gideon the First, Giddy One, wanting the sword? I don't know. It's a weird one-off. I didn't notice it ever before, and this time reading through, I was like, wait a second. Like, can he feel Wake in there? That's clearly somehow connects to Wake in Kithorea's body. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Gross.
I also, sorry, speaking of wink, wink, nudge, nudge, I started like cracking myself up while they were speculating about the dumbest thing, which is they reasonably were pointing out that Ortis the First likes to do things face to face. That's what got him into trouble around the time of Gideon's conception. And it's me just like cracking up because I like the idea that he just really hates to do doggy style. He's only in if you're if you're face to face. That's anyway. All right, I'm
staring
done now.
intensely into his eyes. No, he seems like just such a weird dude.
Bad.
It's like, who would ever want to like Pyrrha? Yes, Pyrrha in Giddy One's body, sure.
I like weirdly
Giddy
kind of
One in his own body. No, he's
I
just
sort of
too
think
intense.
he's hot.
No, he creeps me out. I'm like, I don't need this level of seriousness.
I understand entirely. This makes sense. So the other thing with Giddy One is the Emperor says he made a pact with an authority that Jod has no power to gainsay, that he would protect Jod from all dangers. And we know that Jod is the one that put Giddy One up to this, up to killing Harrow. And so I just don't understand. I don't understand that.
I think he's a lying asshole.
That'll do it, actually. I have two more things I want to talk about. One is Brooke brought this up at the end, but like Canaan House starts getting weird, right? We know there's no good weather in Harrow's brain. Fine, the rain. We know that there's kind of gross rain, blood and organs, ultimately. That's very River. What the fuck with the syringes? I feel like that is a whole other IVF. Oh my God. So this is something that Wake is bringing along. Have we had this conversation before? I think we've had this conversation before. And I had the same reaction. All right. Well, we'll let that go.
Yeah, and then, I think no, we don't have to let it go. I think that's what it is. It's like the weather actually isn't Harrow. The weather is Wake, because then it starts getting weird and like it starts talking about like the way that the organs and blood and everything is. It's like amniotic fluid. It's like fallopian tubes. It's like syringes and vials and things that you would need for IVF.
Very, 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 very interesting. All right. We'll have to come back to that. I just wanted to bring up a couple of things that are interesting within the Annabelle Lee poem. Yeah. So actually, Brooke brought up one. The sea is a key character in the Annabelle Lee poem.
Yep.
And I really, really think that there's something fundamental about the sea, about salt water, that allows transit or communication or safety, or there's something really fucking important about salt water that we don't understand yet. So I thought that was interesting.
Chapter 23, Third House Skull. 4 months before the Emperor's murder, Ortis I and Cytherea's dead body sitting in a tree, Kissing. Ianthe, imperfect and unperturbed.
Chapter 24, Second House Skull. Murder at bath time. The Saint of Duty is a Thanergy void. The Saint of Duty must die.
Chapter 25, Ninth House Skull. You do not sleep. You make soup. And God said, stop.
Chapter 26, Broken Eighth House Skull. Silas and Corona Beth go over the edge.
Fuck me.
Fuck John. You know what? He needs a more demanding job.
That's right. He needs to be doing this less than full time. Oh my God. That was...
It's a river bubble? What?
It's a pocket dimension?
What else did he say that I was like, oh, the sleeper is in the fucking sword? Go away! You're not. He's not allowed on this podcast anymore. We kicked him off officially.
All right. Well,
I was like, there's no possible way
for new newbies.
I was like, there's no possible way. I was like, he's cheating, and then he says stupid shit, and I'm like, oh well, maybe not.
I know. Sorry. I'm so grateful for the second half of any sentence, because like the first half is always fucking spot on, and it kills me. This is. The sleeper's in the sword and jump to Cytherea. I was like, you don't even know that Commander Wake exists. Like, how dare you? And then I'm trying to.
And then he's like, "Oh, God is in on God's in on the
God's in on the work. He's in on the yeah, exactly. No. Oh my God, that was good. That was a lot. I will say something that they don't know about yet is about Giddy One and Pyrrha.
And there's no fucking way you could.
But you kind of could, because in fact, like, so there's several times in these chapters where I feel like we see Pyrrha, and Tamsin makes a very real effort to be specific, the un-Ortis-like tenor of his voice and like this gentleness in his hands when he's kissing Cytherea that she's never seen before. And it's really easy to be like, oh,
and the back
the
is
Saint
turned.
of Duty contains multitudes. Yeah, exactly.
His back is turned, so
you
you
can't see
never
his
turn
eyes.
around to see his eyes. Yep.
But I love that, like, again, it's so easy as a reader to just take this as a complex character instead of what it is, which is two different people.
Also, I texted you and was like, oh, are the kiddies going to catch this particular sentence, which is that he only ever showed interest in one other person, which was Pyrrha and the criminals he's hunted. And when he kicked that Edenite commander out of an airlock, it was like seeing a man on his wedding day.
I loved that. It was so fucking spot on. No, they completely have ignored the Edenite commander. We are very lucky. We are so lucky, Marie.
Yep. Because if they caught that, then it would have been like, damn, they've got the whole thing.
There is something interesting about Gideon being legendarily unamorous. Like,
weird,
and
right?
I almost wonder, he has such a dedication to John, to Jod, to God. He is incredibly dutiful. And there's a part of me that wonders if it is actually a sexual interest thing. If he like has always loved John in a way that's actually more than some of the other lictors. But I don't know that's true. He's dedicated very impressively. In this moment, which I also love along with John, where the Saint of Duty raises his cigarette in an unmistakable salute. It's a beautiful moment. So the question is, do we think that's Pyrrha or Gideon? Because I think it could go either way. For me, cigarettes is always Pyrrha.
But I also noticed as we were talking through it, and it was something that I never really, because I made the slip up about how Nigella was the cook. No, yeah. Nigella always was the cook, except when they're talking about this, they're talking about Cassie, which means that Cassie became the cook once she had become a lictor.
She actually took up like significant parts of her Cavalier in a personality way. Like it's not this distinct thing. There really is a lot of miscibility. There's a lot of like overflow and overlap and merging of these souls. I think you're totally right. So you do have to wonder, like, are Gideon and Pyrrha two different people? There is like a significant enough merge. Yeah. I am going to follow up on this more in our next episode, but you have gotten me so fucking hooked on Ianthe and Coronabeth's plan. It's like all I can think about. It's my new, center of my whole world. There's a really interesting moment where Harrow looks over and Ianthe is reopening her small journal. You noted that whatever she was doing involved some quite substantial mathematics. And then on her bedside table, there's these apples that she's trying to like figure out how to not diminish away into and let them rot.
She's trying to keep them in stasis.
She's working on shit while she's on the Mithraeum. Harrow is like mostly working on staying alive, but I think Ianthe is actually like actively working on things that have nothing to do with the resurrection beast. She's like working on her own plan. There's some weird shit going on there.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if it's referenced so much in these chapters, but it very definitely becomes a thing where she's jealous of how much Jod interacts and seems to care about and like dotes on Harrow and the fact that Harrow gets like one-on-ones with Jod and she doesn't, because she's like, maybe I would like to ask him about these mathematics. And that's partly why she freaks the fuck out when Harrow is like, well, Jod said you're not all that. And she was like, basically like throws a fit.
Yeah, which is, again, unusual for her because like when Augustine basically is giving her shit for being, terrible, not using her arm right, blah, 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 blah. Ianthe's basically like, yep, so it goes. What you going to do about it? But she is upset when it comes to teacher, not caring about her or thinking that she is less than she is. It's interesting, too, because Ianthe, of course, has spent her whole life actively trying to be the unobtrusive twin, actively trying to be the person that is not seen and not thought about. And yet it bothers her. It's this weird combo of like almost being too good at what you're doing and people don't even notice how hard you tried to get there.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so I have some random points also from the Mithraeum. When Harrow tells Jod about Gideon making out with Cytherea, Jod says, "Are you certain?" Harrow swears by the locked tomb, and Jod says, "I wouldn't swear by that in this instance." And I was like, what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah, like why this instance?
Was there some corpse compulsion with Alecto's body before that shit was like, tucked away? Or was Alecto a like relevant thing? Or did Gideon have a thing for Alecto? That also could be a thing. I don't know.
Yeah, that seems like really, really weird. Actually, it's pretty funny. Like right before this, I think it was like yesterday, I saw on the Reddit forum that someone, which I don't agree with all their points, but they use that specific phrase to say that what if Jod has been going back to see Alecto regularly? And that's why you wouldn't swear by the locked tomb, because the locked tomb isn't really locked.
That's also... That's pretty solid, actually.
And I was like...
But also, especially if he's going back to see Alecto.
I know!
Oh, God.
Anyway.
So Brooke pointed this out. We don't know enough about what Jod's powers are. We don't understand the limits of necromancy. And I'm not sure that he is limited to what we think of as necromancy, which is also interesting. His powers are different. They frequently get described as like this blinding light in Harrow's gaze, things like that. It's
and like a lemony smell and like singes the sinuses, right? Like kind of like getting like a whiff of wasabi like straight up your nose or something.
Gotta love horseradish. And then the last one was something that actually Brooke brought up that I think is super interesting. 10,000 years since I've eaten human being, Harrow, and I didn't really want an encore. And I too had no idea what this was, but John brought up that one of the steps in lictoring is potentially consuming the flesh.
Yep.
My last thing, I have some like callbacks, call forwards, Easter eggs I wanted to address. Mm-hmm. In the chapters on the Mithraeum, we get as though your brain had formed a scab over everything that had happened to you.
Well, yeah.
And then also, I fear I have done something to my hypothalamus, which is in the context of her overstimulating her cortisol, but like she has fucked up her brain, like she done. The last thing, so Silas is actually super interesting in this weird little one-off bubble chapter that I usually ignore.
This is because he's fucking figured it out and he's like, I'm not playing your fucking game.
Yes.
And like when they go back and talk to it's coming up in the next chapters. We'll talk about it again. But basically Silas tells her this is the first time that somebody, instead of like trying to prompt her, when Marta comes in, she's confused and she says, is this how it happens? Like, is this what happened, right? And Abigail keeps asking Harrow, is this how it happened? And Silas is the first person being like, I'm not playing your fucking game. This isn't how it happened.
Yes, it's amazing, actually. And it's an intense set of moments. And it's interesting because I think not all the ghosts know what's happening right away. I think like Abigail informs them as they go. But Silas figures it out all on his own, which actually kind of checks out. He's smart. He's just a dick. You know, you can be two things. And I also really like that he pushes Coronabeth, and he specifically, before he pushes her, and she's not a person. She's just basically an imaginary construct in an imaginary river bubble. But he says, I hope the blood of your blood suffers. And I think that's because the very last fight he had was with Ianthe, and he blames that fight for his death and for the thing that took over Column. Mm-hmm. The other thing is that Harrow says, you know, like, prepare yourself, defend yourself, Silas. I'm going to attack you. And Silas says, you say to me, defend yourself? How could I?
Yeah. Basically, like, defend myself. I'm in your fucking imagination. Like, exactly, I'm in your rules. Like, how could I possibly?
Dead. I'm already dead. Yeah. So, like, she also says something about, like, you push Coronabeth to her death. And he's like, death? Like, he's like, what are you talking about? I think it's probably one of the first moments. I don't know that it troubles Harrow that much, but it ought to, because you're right. This is actually the first time that you get something that is questioning the reality of the whole situation, as opposed to just questioning her own brain and her own brain's ability to interpret things and see things correctly.
I also think it's really interesting that John picked up the splash of bloody water, because it was something that really, to me, I only caught this time around, where I was like, oh shit, there it is. Like, there Same. It is. You go over the edge, there's the bloody water, there's the river. And I was like, I wonder if they're going to catch this. And John absolutely did. But the thing that I think is interesting that they don't know. They are so discombobulated by the river bubble that they're like, John can catch, he's like, I think it's happening in the river and it's just bonkers crazy. But they're still not picking up the pieces of who is in the bubble and who isn't in the bubble.
Yes, who is real. I don't want to say alive, but who is like an active, autonomous figure in the bubble, and who is just like a passive nobody, which is like Corona is like not a real person because she is still alive in the real world. Yeah, it's interesting. I wish I had gone through and like carefully tracked who died and who I remember as being alive, because although I think Palamides kind of fucks it up, because as far as you know, Palamides is dead. So he is like he's anomalous in that he's dead in both worlds. Anyway.
Yeah, I think it's probably something you can't track. And maybe once they get to, I think that John is going to freak the fuck out when they finally meet Camilla and see the bubble.
Oh, I think they're both gonna fucking freak out. That I freaked out when I read that. I was like, what the actual fuck? This was so far out of left field and not what I was expecting at all.
Well, and it's also
because I was in full Mithraeum mode.
Yeah, I'm curious too of like, when did you start being like, okay, there's something, I think it maybe wasn't even this early, but this is about the time where I'm starting to go, okay, this is really off the rails. I think I didn't get as far as saying that this is a river bubble, but I was like, this is off the rails. This is something weird. This is not an alternative history. Like,
yes,
this is
similarly.
something where it's like protecting her memories. I don't know how it's protecting her memories, but this is something that's really weird. And it is like the needles and everything getting colder and the bloody water. And it's like all of that, like, I'm not deliberately like murder boarding, so I didn't catch it, but it was very much like it does tip you off. You're like, this is not an alternate memory the same way as how I was thinking it. It can't possibly be.
I definitely started out with the assumption that it was just like her making up new memories to fill in the space. And you're right. Like, it gets weirder and weirder and more specific. It starts with all things that actually happened to them. Oh, they had a tea party in Canaan House where teacher gave them rings. And you're like, there are discrepancies, but it's not off the way it is off the second someone is shot, the way it is off the second you have needles and, you know, this bloody waters. And I never figured out it was a river bubble. Even when we met Calamities, I just got angrier and angrier because I literally was like reading these being like, this is insane. This is madness. Are you trying to kill me, Tamsin?
This is also looking too far ahead, but what did you do when you read the thing where it says you couldn't have imagined that he saw me? Were you like fully on board, like ready for Gideon to be back, like
yes.
Immediately?
Yes. I read that and I was like, done, Gideon.
Yeah.
But I still, you know, it's all madness. And to be fair, actually, I don't know that's true. It's so long ago now. It's possible I thought it was the body because also the body shows up and then stops showing up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be interested to see what our
I think I was hoping it was Gideon, but I think it was possible that it's the body. I think that they're going to immediately be like, oh yeah, that's Gideon. Where's Gideon? And then they're going to be pissed that it takes so long. Although I don't think it takes that much longer.
It's not that long after. Yeah. Oh my God. We're on our way to like some serious madness. I think we only have like 3 or 4 episodes before we actually get to the Epiparados where we learn that she did self-lobotomy.
Whew. Okay.
Chapter 27, Third House Skull. 4 months before the Emperor's murder. Harrow, bone architect. Ianthe gets a brand new arm.
Chapter 28, Broken Fifth House Skull. Harrow compares notes with the fifth. I will remember the first time you kissed me. The ghost agenda.
Chapter 29, Third House Skull. Ianthe gives Harrow a makeover, conspiracy to commit murder, the Saint of Patience throws a dinner party.
I love that Brooke was like, oh no, we're not going to seduce God, are we?
That was so fucking funny. Yeah, John's like, I hope that's not what happens. And I was like, nah. This episode, we got some kind of a little bit of sex appeal here. And I also think their threesome is fucking hot as hell. So we get, 2 episodes back to back with a little smut.
I don't think that it's that hot. I think I'm more on Ianthe's side. Although I don't agree.
Old people.
I am annoyed by her suggestion that old people should be shot, and that's why it's disgusting. Maybe I'm more on Harrow's side. I'm horrified.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. That's it works for me. Again, I'm really delighted that God is bisexual. Man. Okay.
What do we actually have to talk about, spoilers wise?
I thought it was really fucking funny, actually, that Brooke is like on this kick where she thinks that Ianthe like thinks she has a master plan, but in fact doesn't have a master plan and is sort of playing it fast and loose, which is the opposite of what I think and how I shifted. They talked a little bit about potentially the fact that both Mercy and Augustine seem to have an agenda that doesn't line up with Jod's, which I think is accurate.
I think everybody has their own agenda, and that's partly why everything is a mess.
Yes, 100%. And that's why it's hard to keep track of, is because it's not consistent, and that's because people aren't talking to one another. They're all kind of doing their own thing. They had a couple of things that I thought were truly interesting. So, for example, they noticed the fact that Jod gets put in an airlock when the resurrection beast is coming. And one thing they said was maybe he doesn't have a defense mechanism. So we know that the logic for this is that if Jod got Harold sickness or if Jod died, then Dominicus goes out and everyone in the 9 houses dies. So it's like a big deal that they cannot risk. We also know that Jod basically lied about that and it's not that big of a deal. However, they did point out something that I hadn't thought about before, which is what happens when Jod's soul goes in the river? Like, what happens to his body? Is it possible to fill up with something else? Or does he actually have any sort of like cavalier capability? We never see him handle a sword, but Alecto is kind of a different sort of bodyguard. I don't
think
fucking
because
know.
he and Alecto did it differently and Alecto is switched off, that even if he goes, that he basically kind of splits.
He would be in both places. It's not a question of like being just in the river or just in the real world.
Yeah, that he doesn't actually switch off. Like that he can put himself in the river, just his soul, and also still be consciously in his body. That's what I think. I think it's like not a switching place or something like that.
It would be interesting to see his eyes in the context of him dropping into the river. It would be very, very interesting. And actually, to your point here with Alecto, actually, Brooke did a good job noticing that in this letter from Wake, it talks about died multiple times. And she started thinking about how the body also said that the body died twice. And she said that maybe the body dies, Jod resurrects it, and then the body sees the cost and has to be killed again.
I don't think it has anything to do with the letter.
No, it has fuck all to do with the letter. The letter is about Wake and Pyrrha, but it was really funny that I had forgotten that actually the body explicitly says they died twice. I think it was interesting that Brooke is kind of on this kick about why Harrow is special. And it is, you know, she's like, is it a conspiracy that they figured out how to murder 200 babies to make her? And I don't think that's the case. But I think it is actually as straightforward as Jod sort of sees Harrow as a daughter figure. I don't even think it's anything extra there.
It does bring up, though, it's always puzzled me of like, how does Jod know what's going on the Ninth? How does he know that Harrow's parents are dead?
That is weird. I agree. That's something that should not be known. I think you brought up last week the possibility that Jod is actually visiting the Ninth periodically, which would be pretty funny. But that's, I don't know. I think there is something weird there. I also wonder to what degree you get Gideon's soul seeping into Harrow such that Jod feels some sort of paternal energy towards it in some, magical way. So maybe there's something there. Harrow is also just a brilliant necromancer who needs a hug. So maybe he just, wants to be that person for her so that he can feel good about himself, so he can feel like he is a provider.
This is going to sound hilarious, but I think that he just has a savior complex.
Yes, he does.
So
he so
broken,
does.
Right? He sees something broken, and like, of course, like he's not going to worry about Ianthe because she just seems so much more self-sufficient and also not as impressive. But like Harrow is impressive and she's so broken, and he's like, oh, I can fix this.
Yes, 100%.
Oh, that brings me to something that I found it fascinating that Harrow points out to Ianthe that you have to, like, she's already worked out, you have to have nerves to do the regeneration.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why she puts nerves in Ianthe's arms. She found that out because she was trying to put herself into so much pain. She was deliberately doing things to put herself into pain to see if she could shock herself into...
If she could get it to kick back in.
If she could get it to kick in, which is fascinating because that's what we think Jod is doing by telling Gideon to try
and murder her over and over.
Murder her.
Yes, I'm with you 100%. It's tragic. They're all trying to make this thing happen, and it pisses me off because it's the kind of thing where like you're trying to make it happen one way and not admitting that actually it could just be useful and interesting this way too. That like Harrow, just as Harrow half elixir, is an incredible force of necromancy.
I mean, I can understand that, but I can also be like, no empty bodies.
Yes, that also makes sense that you can't afford empty bodies in general. Mercy does this weird thing that Tamsin makes a big deal out of, like where Mercy touches Harrow's head and says Ordis, but she's saying Gideon a couple times, right? She absolutely realizes that surgery has been done.
I think she just even figures it out. I think she figures it out, but she doesn't think about what the implications of that are.
Okay, so she literally knows the answer. She just doesn't care.
Yeah, she knows the answer. She doesn't care, and that's why she tries to murder Harrow, because she knows that Harrow has done something that makes it so that she cannot become a lictor.
That she is a de facto empty body.
And she's going to finish the job when the resurrection beast comes. So as soon as, like, she's just taking care of business. And that actually, like, it has just now solved the problem for me of being like, why did Mercy leave the fight, leave everybody else vulnerable to come out? And it's like, because she knew that once the fight started, Harrow was in the river. And so she could be like, yeah, we're not going to let this happen. Like, this is done. And it's her not even being like nasty or anything. It is her just standing on business and being like, not a risk that I will
she's
take.
being efficient. But it's also interesting. So we got also more about Mercy in this. And I think it's really, really interesting. We know that Mercy is back-channeling with BOE. We know from As Yet Unsent that she helped them get Judith and that they're teaching Judith how to use a Steely. So that's part of whatever her plan is coordinating with BOE about getting them faster than light travel via the Steely, right? But we don't know what the rest of her business is that Augustine is covering for. And Augustine clearly knows it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I just mean that like she leaves the river early. And I like the idea that it's in part to like just like tie up loose ends because, you know, Christabel always said I was neat. But it also seems to me that she is leaving right away because it's part of whatever the fuck her plan is. And I don't know if her plan has always been to kill Jod, if she intended to do it on her own without witnesses, if she like I don't know which parts of this are her plan.
Well, and it seems like she and Augustine always had a plan on how they were going to kill Jod, but they were going to kill Jod and finish necromancy because as soon as you kill Dominicus, there is no more necromancy being born. So everybody who's a necromancer is going to die out. But they wanted to do it in such a way that they could evacuate the other houses.
That's right. The original plan actually included getting everyone out of the 9 houses before Jod dies. You're totally right about that. It is, and they were coordinating on it. So the other piece is like Augustine's reasons of his own for being willing to kill the Saint of Duty. He says that Gideon, Ortis no longer listens. He always got bizarre obsessions. He's caused me more pain over these last scant 40 years than I dare to admit. And I don't know what that means either. I think our newbies had it dead on that like one of the things we learn a lot about here is how everyone has different motivations and we do not know what they are.
Because it says 50 years ago. Was it 40 or 50 years ago that they got the demagogue? That's maybe what it was.
That's right.
That it lines up with Wake.
Okay, so it's just Wake in general that like he's been just interfacing with Wake too hard and everybody's been like covering for his, you know, his affair that he's having with the commander, which is also interesting. I just thought of something. Let's assume that in fact, they got their demagogue something like 40, 50 years ago. It's Commander Wake. Gideon starts sleeping with her or Pyrrha, either way, almost immediately, right? It's actually shocking that they never did have a baby, which makes me wonder if it's not possible for lictors to have babies.
I don't think it is.
It's interesting that obviously like the eggs you gave me all died. I've been thinking about this as Mercy giving her dummy eggs, some for reasons that I literally do not understand. But I also like the idea that potentially they were giving real eggs, except that it doesn't work because Mercy's eggs cannot actually produce new life. And that, for instance, Gideon could actually never have been Gideon II's parent because his sperm cannot produce new life out of something from the lictor process.
It's also possible that they've always only been having sex with each other.
Except that we know that Gideon was having sex with Wake regularly.
Well, I mean, before that point.
But it also seems unlikely to me. I don't know, given their like sexual proclivities and also given the fact that they only have so many of each other, I wouldn't be surprised if they occasionally went and had sex with random cohort officers.
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't be surprised, but I feel like the text
There's
talks
no
more
evidence for
about,
it.
like, there's no evidence for them doing that. And
yes, all the evidence is for them having sex with each other. I mean, a mortal is basically a child for them because it's, you know, the difference between being a 50-year-old and a 10,000-year-old. So incidentally, I wanted to bring up Ulysses' sexy parties. Someday, I hope we learn more about Ulysses because here's the crazy part.
yeah, I wonder that so much as well.
In the bubble, I had a couple of thoughts. One is that I think it's really interesting that Pro is referred to as Pro almost all the time in Gideon the First, and almost always referred to as Protesilaus here. Mm-hmm. And of course, the opposite is true for Dulcinea. We call her Dulcinea all the way through Gideon the First, and here she's often Dulcie. And I like that because it turned out that they really were just different personalities, that they, you know, it's another way of reemphasizing that we really were meeting different people. Protesilaus likes his whole name, and
Yep.
you know, and Dulcie's happy to be a Dulcie. I think Abigail for sure knows that Corona is still alive. She says, I just hadn't expected. If she's gone, then perhaps that means ... So that's interesting. And then would you like to go through the note? We both know what we think it means.
Basically, I color-coded it for saying, like, who is being referred to because it's so confusing. So, I will remember the first time you kissed me, you apologized. That's Wake speaking to Pyrrha.
Agreed.
You said, that's Pyrrha, I am sorry, destroy me as I am, but I want to kiss you before I'm killed. That's Pyrrha saying to Wake, right? Like, the first time she meets her, they're in a bad situation, apparently, and she says, let me kiss you first.
Yeah.
And so I said to you, why? So that's Wake again, being like, what? And you said, here's Pyrrha, because I have only once met someone so utterly willing to burn for what they believed in, and I loved him on sight. And the first time I died, I asked of him what I now ask of you.
So let's pause there for a minute.
Yeah.
We've talked about how, so when I first read this, the first several times, I thought that this might have actually been Jod, because I was trying to think about someone who's so willing to burn for what they believed in. But I agree now with you that this is talking about Giddy One, that right before Giddy One lictors her, she asks him to kiss her because he will burn for what he believes in. So here's my question to you, Marie. What is it that Giddy One believes in so intensely that Pyrrha sees in him?
I will ask a second question of you. I'll turn it back on you. This says, the first time I died. I think the first time I died is pre-resurrection. That's why it says
wild.
The first time.
I didn't think about that. So this is not right before they licked her.
And this is about his faith in Jod.
Yes. Okay. I love that. I think that's beautiful. I think that's apt. And it's so painful that Giddy One is willing to believe so hard in this person who just is not fucking worthy of it at all.
Yep. But I think that that's his drive. His drive is Jod.
Yeah. I like that a lot.
I guess we should continue with the rest of the letter. Okay. So first time we got off on first time I died. Then it's back to Wake. It says, I kissed you. So I kissed you, meaning I kissed Pyrrha. And later I would kiss him too, because now she's kissing Gideon, before I understood what you were. And then she finally realizes that they're lictors and that there's two of them and they're switching back and forth. And all three of us lived to regret it. Yeah, I think so. And then the rest of it, when I'm in heaven, I'll remember your mouth. And when you roast down in hell, I think you'll remember mine. I think that just goes to like how weird and fucked up they were, that they continued on this horrible threesome.
Just a thought that I think is interesting. The fact that she references heaven and hell is fascinating. I mean, so we've mostly talked about hell in the context of either the river or what's beyond the river, but we've never talked about heaven. The necromancers never talk about heaven. And it is this inherently like Christian ideology of what happens after death, which is sort of at odds with the river and the way that we have grown to understand death through these books. I also think it's interesting because it makes me wonder if Blood of Eden practices some format of Christianity, how much of that stayed around in these 10,000 years. Or alternatively, again, I still think Wake is fucking weird. So like, what is Wake's understanding of these terms and where do they come from is interesting.
Maybe this is the only time in the books we hear heaven.
Yeah. It's not a normal word in the books. It's really, really interesting. Even like heavenly or angelic are not things that come up as far as I can remember, but now I'll be on the lookout for them. This whole thing of once I understood what you were. So when Pyrrha / Giddy One first approaches Wake, are they coming in as just a normal necromancer or just a nothing, just a normal human?
Right. Like how did they infiltrate Blood of Eden?
POE? Yeah.
I feel like that has to be what happened because there's no way that Wake would continue with them. And then that means that that's why, like, once she finally figures it out and then she's messing with other lictors, it's like something having to do with, like, messing with Mercy and Augustine is how she figures out that Gideon is also
Got it.
a lictor.
Because he has some trait that is similar to Mercy and Augustine, and so she, like, recognizes it in him.
Right, or, like something tips her off, and then she's, like, or they say something to her about how somebody else is going to be, like, she's going to have to watch out for somebody else, and she's like, who is this? And they, like, show her a photo, and she's like, the fuck? Right? Or it's something she's about like the switching back face. And forth that makes her realize it, but then she's in too deep.
What a fun relationship. I would read that trashy novel too.
I wonder if there's fanfic. I'm sure there is. Somebody can tell us.